live stream the main public sessions of the seminar, as agreed with the chair of the executive board of the Coimbra group. Yeah. And then, we need a special type of sound so that people at home looking at our activities also can hear. Thank you. Can you hear me without the mic? Yes. Also in the back? I'm a teacher, so I can be really loud while opening an event. Dear colleagues, good afternoon to you all and welcome at the Coimbra Group high-level seminar on educational policy, hosted this year by Alexandru and Cuza University of Iași. It is both an honor and a pleasure to welcome you at this very exciting event on the transformative role of AI in higher education. As we stand on the edge of a new era in education, it is very clear for all of us that AI offers both tremendous potential and significant challenges. From personalized learning experience to smarter assessment tools, AI is not just a tool for increasing the efficiency of education and research and support services in our universities, but also may be seen as a partner in creating a more inclusive, adaptive, and accessible educational environments. Today's event is a great opportunity to exchange about how AI can enhance teaching, learning, and assessment in ways that benefits both students, teachers, administrators, educational developers, and so on. As we begin this journey together, I encourage you on behalf of the Education Innovation Working Group in the Coimbra Group to think creatively, to challenge assumptions, and to be open to the exciting possibilities that AI can bring to the world of education. I hope you are inspired by these very few introductory comments on the topic of our high-level seminar on educational policy this year. And with no further introduction, I will give the floor to the host of this event, Professor Liviu George Maha, the rector of Alexandru and Cuza University of Iași. Mr. Rector.
Thank you, Nicoleta. Should be for the real host. The real host is Alexandru and Cuza University of Iași. So institutionally, we organize this event. Our warm welcome, I think, means more now because I'm very, very confident that you remember this day, because usually we keep in our memories the first snow each year, especially here in Romania. Always is a surprise, not only for us, but for the authorities. So, but the memories will be more beautiful, and I hope you'll have another reason to come back here in Iași. So, I have institutionally to say that I am proud and I'm honored and I'm also glad to organize, to be the host, officially, formally, because in fact our colleagues, the Vice Rector for International Relations, Professor Popa, our colleagues from the International Relations Service, sorry, comparing to Nicoleta, my voice is still recovering from a cold, so I have to use the microphone. So they are those who are working for this event. We, the management of the institution, the executive board, we are offering our support. We offer what they need to make these events to be a real success, and we hope to respect this rule. So tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, to say yes, another good event, another successful event happened here in Iași. So I would like to thank them as an organizer, but I have also to thank our group, Coimbra group, institutionally. So Ludovic is here. He already became our friend. I met him this month, this last 6 months, so starting from May. But he already, to prove that he is a real friend, I'll say something personal, but he offered me some chocolate. So he already knows me very well that I love chocolate. So even I tried to have a diet, so it's difficult to refuse such a gift. So thank him for supporting us. I have to thank to all the members of the Coimbra group, to all the participants coming here and offering us their knowledge, their experience, their input to what we have to do on our own, but also together. Because being together in these alliances, in these groups, because Coimbra Group is an informal alliance, let's say, in terms of public funding or applying for projects, but it's a real alliance because I felt that we are together and we can support each other. So even if it's not an alliance officially, but I consider it as alliances, an alliance with common goals, common interests, and to being able to offer that synergy is important to build more that we can build alone. I have also to thank Mr. Chirica, the mayor of our city, Iași. The city hall was always close to what the higher education system, the research environment in general, produced here in Iași, because our authorities, they are confident that the development of our city and of our region is dependent on what is happening in the research and academia, and that's why they are always close to us, and they helped us funding and organizing different events. Now he was, I will say also another personal, let's say, he was pretty angry that we didn't organize an event at the city hall because he wanted to be the host of all the participants coming from other countries. So I appreciate their efforts in helping us, but also being together here at the beginning of this event. At least, but it's not the last important message, is for Professor Lucian, former Vice Rector of our university, Vice Rector for International Relations. He was one of the most representatives of our university in all these alliances and all these international working groups, or only, let's say, cooperating or cooperation groups. His idea now produced results, and I am very glad that he came today to see what we continue to do in this field. Thank you very much. So my message is a festive one, is a formal one. Even maybe the personal tone should have been more strong, but trust me that it's personal, because I'm very glad that I can be here. But we should not forget that it's a seminar. It's a seminar with a very important topic, a very relevant for us from all the specialization we can consider in a comprehensive university. And it's a working event. So we'll work together, listening to each other, or formulating our questions or answers, and so debating in order to have tomorrow some concluding results that I'm certain that they will be more important comparing to my welcome message. So enjoy your stay in Iași. Thank you all my colleagues involved in this activity, in organizing or in the good, let's say, process of debating on this very relevant topic. Thank you.
Well, I have to say that the snow started to melt even more after the rector's welcoming speech. We are certainly very thankful to the efforts of our colleagues from abroad and from our university attending this event. Thank you again for being today with us, and tomorrow, of course. But we are also especially thankful to the City Hall, represented today by the mayor, Mr. Mihai Chirica. They've been supportive at every event, I think, this year that that our university organized since the beginning of 2024, and we do hope for the similar support in the very near future. So, Mr. Mayor, you have the floor. Would you speak in English? Ioan, I can translate. She's your supporter.
Yes.
You know.
Okay, please. Okay. Mulțumesc foarte mult. Dar am să încep cu gluma de la care ați pornit și noastră. Să știți că de data aceasta m-am consultat cu inteligența artificială și a fost o zăpadă programată, întrebând computerul, ce le-ar place foarte mult celor care vin din spre Mediterană, de exemplu? Și am zis că zăpadă că n-au văzut niciodată.
So to start with a joke, I would like to tell you that I've consulted AI this morning, and it told me that snow was ordered especially for you because AI knows that this is what you would have liked to see in Iași.
Deci, practic, n-a fost o surpriză.
So no surprises here.
Și, sigur, va veni și momentul în care va deveni o surpriză. Știm asta. Nu scăpăm în niciun an.
But one day it will be a surprise, definitely.
Sigur, și eu am să transmit același salut. Bine ați venit la Iași. Ne onorează de fiecare dată.
I would also like to welcome all of you to Iași. We're honored to have you here.
Cred că ne știm de cel puțin 8 ani de zile cu Ludovic.
I think I know Ludovic, if I'm not wrong.
Și reiterez invitația de a face pe parcursul anilor care urmează și o întâlnire la primăria municipiului Iași.
And I always invite him to organize more and more events to be hosted by the
lucruri pe care noi l-am făcut împreună cu domnul profesor Lucian acum câțiva ani urmă.
Events such as we've organized with Professor Lucian a few years ago.
Da, și sigur, sunt convins că tema aleasă este una de actualitate.
It's obvious that the
reiterez rolul Universității Alexandru în Cuza în comunitate, care este unul de succes.
I wish good luck to Alexandru Cuza University for the event.
Și sigur, sper ca la sfârșitul acestor comunicări rezultatul lor să fie de folos celor pe care îi pregătiți, studenților și tuturor cadrelor didactice.
And I do hope that the results of the sessions that you'll be having here will be to the benefit of your students and the academic communities in your universities.
Vă mulțumesc și vă aștept oricând cu plăcere.
Thank you and welcome back to Iași anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is now the time to give the word to Professor Ludovic Tilly, Vice Rector of the University of Poitiers and the Chair of the Executive Board of the Coimbra Group. Ludovic, please.
Thank you, Nicoletta. So, dear Rector, dear Mayor, dear colleagues, dear Henri, I'm delighted to welcome you to this Coimbra Group high-level seminar on education policy about, as you know, generative artificial intelligence in higher education. First, I would like to thank Rector Maha and his teams for hosting this important event, Alexandru Cuza University in Iași. During the next days, we will explore the transformative potential of AI, a technology that is rapidly reshaping our world, including higher education and research. The implications of AI in higher education are profound and far-reaching. So let's delve into some of the key areas where AI is poised to revolutionize our institutions and practices. Personalized learning, intelligent tutoring systems, new educational tools, automated administrative tasks, enhanced research, accessibility and inclusion. While the potential benefits of AI are immense, it is crucial to approach this technology with a thoughtful and ethical mindset. We must consider the potential risks, such as job displacement, misuse and biases of AI tools, digital divide, pedagogical shifts. By embracing AI responsibly and strategically, we should be in capacity to harness its power to create a more innovative, equitable, and effective higher education system. So let's explore these opportunities and challenges together in the sessions that follow. Well, I should let you know that the previous words have been generated by AI after a specific prompt related to the opening of this event. Really, I did this yesterday afternoon. But now these words are mine. Huh? But as a researcher, I did not limit myself to this easy approach. I could actually read several books on AI, this is true, since last summer. And what I learned is actually quite well represented by the previous AI-generated summary. Really, it's always amazing, how it captures well. But though I would like to mention a very important point that is missing in that AI-generated summary or opening, which is actually the Guide for AI in Education and Research, which was published in September 23 by UNESCO. And I would like to share with you a brief summary of its 8 recommendations. Number 1, promote inclusion and equity in access to generative AI tools. 2, protect human autonomy. 3, control and assess AI tools. 4, train students, teachers, and researchers to AI tools. 5, foster the diversity of opinions. 6, maybe I missed one number, so I'm lost in the numbers. Foster the diversity of opinions. Test AI tools in real-life context. Analyze ethical and social implications of AI tools. And perform a real intersectoral and interdisciplinary reflection on AI implications. And I believe that it is in particular that last part that is among our objectives today and tomorrow. So I wish you an enriching seminar with a lot of debates using our own human intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludovic. Thank you not only for the opening speech, but also for the support for the idea of the seminar, because the whole concept, choosing the topic, organizing the program, inviting the keynotes, was done together by the colleagues from the Education Innovation Working Group. Can you raise your hands? Some, I know, some are really shy. They are not going to say. And the executive board of the Coimbra group. So thank you all for your engagement with the topic and with preparing the seminar and convincing very relevant keynote speakers to come to Iași and share the insights on the topic. Thank you again. It is now time to start with the first keynote. Thank you so much, Mr. Rector, Mr. Mayor, Ludovic. While Simon will prepare the presentation, which is already uploaded, you will get help. So you just need your computer as a side computer, I guess.
I need.
You need it, okay.
No, I need to because I can't read. No, I can read it
Yeah, you just send the presentation. It's already on the computer. But while they prepare for the presentation, I'm going to say a few words about Simon. Simon leads the higher education policy team in the OECD Directorate for Education and Skills. Over at least for the last 2 years, the OECD work program on higher education has focused on resourcing higher education, adapting higher education provision in the face of evolving demand of upskilling and reskilling, including the development of non-degree credentials, as well as digitalization in the higher education sector. In addition to the work on micro-credential, major current projects led by the OECD team deal with higher education financing, widening access and study success in higher education, and quality assurance across post-secondary education sector. Prior to joining the OECD in 2017, Simon worked for 7 years on higher education policy issues at the European Commission, and he is now today in Iași to present a paper about the implications of AI for higher education, emerging patterns in OECD countries.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. Yeah. Is that working?
No. You have to press the brown button.
Yeah, I did press it. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not really here to present a paper. I think I should start, and I should almost start with an apology to an extent. Okay, right. At the OECD are an intergovernmental organisation. We're 38 member countries, cooperate on various aspects of public policy. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but the challenge of me in a way, working on higher education policy at the OECD and being invited to an event to talk about AI is the amount we've actually written or done about policy on AI, on artificial intelligence, up to now is very limited. Now I have colleagues who are working on this, but it's specifically in the area we work, which is policies that regulate higher education, policies to fund higher education, a whole sort of environment of public policy for higher education that you all know very well. Up to now, not that much has been talked about in terms of artificial intelligence and how you actually change and adapt policy to a changing environment. And that's something we'll talk about today. So in a way, I'm here much more to learn from you than to tell you anything interesting. So I apologize for that in advance, but nevertheless, I will try and sort of just provide a little bit, hopefully a little bit of context for lots of more detailed, much more focused discussions that we're going to have later. I'll talk a little bit about the work that the OECD has done on artificial intelligence in broader areas, a little bit about the work on capabilities of AI and the changing capabilities of AI, which is obviously a contextual factor that we're going to all be talking about later. The question about how AI is being integrated into teaching and learning in higher education, and I will focus on the teaching and learning dimension. Obviously there's a big question around AI in research, a question about AI in the process of operating higher education institutions, but I'll focus on the teaching and learning dimension. And finally, a little bit, and this is really, a lot of these are questions, is sort of what do you think, what do we think higher education, sort of policy or policy in higher education, what do we think needs to change to take account of the changes in AI and also promote the changes related to AI. And I think on that latter point we can have a bit of a discussion. The context for this is we at the OECD work with 2-year work programs, and this question of how policy should adapt for AI in higher education is a priority for our next biennium, which is 2025-26. At the sort of highest level, the OECD is one of those kind of organizations that has been saying something internationally on AI. It's formed most recently a global partnership on artificial intelligence, which actually includes India and in addition to a number of other countries, major countries, in addition to the 38 OECD members. And it has a broad sort of initiative to monitor developments and promote developments in the area of overall AI regulation in the member countries. And that sort of was embodied in a recommendation on artificial intelligence adopted in 2019, revised this year, and which has a section, you will recognize some of the language because it's either been taken by other legislation or other pieces of legislation at international level or national level, but it's been inspired by existing legislation. And it has a section on national policies and international cooperation for trustworthy AI. That's one of the phrases we hear a lot. And it has a specific section where it recommends that the member countries work on preparing and adapting policies in the area of human capacity and labour market transformation. So there's a kind of broad brush commitment by the countries to sort of preparing the future. There's been a sort of acknowledging that artificial intelligence is going to have a profound impact on the way different occupations function, the tasks involved in different jobs. We know that the labour market is changing. It's also, and we'll come to that in a second, but obviously the impacts on how education systems operate. There's an interaction there as well. AI it impacts directly on education systems, but it also, as education systems, part of their mission is preparing for later life, then the changes in later life, the changes in work, also impact on what is happening in education and training systems. The work that you might have, some of you, I think we talked about and met some of my colleagues who work in some areas of artificial intelligence. There's a rather major program of work in the area of what is called work, innovation, productivity and skills, but essentially you could think of it really as sort of skills, labour market, education area. It's actually has identified kind of various areas. It's working, really looking at sort of understanding the impact and the classification of different impacts of AI. It's looking at the question of the performance of artificial intelligence, which is to say, its capabilities, and we'll come back to that in a second. And I have colleagues directly in the Director of Education where I work who are working on that specific project. There's the question of diffusion. Now, AI, that means the adoption of AI technologies across the economy, essentially, and how fast that is happening. Again, we'll come to that in a second. We know a lot that there's sort of a lot is promised. There is a question about how fast that process will actually, how fast the adoption of technologies will occur. The economists among you will be familiar with that sort of discussion more generally. And the last one is sort of the impact on the labour market. So it's very closely related, but it's a bit like the future of work. What does this mean in terms of what different occupations look like? Are jobs going to disappear? Are jobs going to be created? That whole question. A lot of that obviously quite challenging to work on, but future of labour markets it's always quite challenging to work on. In terms of the work programme that we have coming up, we've set these questions, and those are some of the questions we'd like to explore with you as well, and among others. Institutional level is incredibly important for us to talk to. We spend a lot of our time talking to people who work in ministries, people who work in authorities for education, sometimes even sort of ministers, vice ministers, but we don't always, as an international organisation, we often obviously do talk to people working in higher education institutions, but we kind of, they're not our first interlocutor, and that's an issue that we have to sometimes come up against. But basically the questions that we've put on the work programme are sort of what are the implications for generative AI for the way teaching and learning happens. We have the question around sort of the implications of artificial intelligence for content, of what is changing in terms of content. So there's a kind of a process question, a pedagogy question, and then there's sort of the content of learning question. Those two things are closely interrelated, of course. And finally the question, and that's the one I've already highlighted, of like, what are these changes that are being driven by higher education institutions, or in a way to which higher education institutions are reacting? How do those changes, sort of, what do they mean in terms of the policy framework in which higher education institutions operate? What needs to change? What needs to change to promote perhaps good adoption of AI? What needs to change to allow, to permit changes to AI, adoption of AI? And what needs to happen in general perhaps to facilitate the widespread adoption and safe? I guess the last one is around sort of safety and the responsible adoption of AI. Very quickly, I mean, the AI definition that is in our working, in our recommendation is actually being quite widely adopted. The fact that AI is increasingly in its sort of what some people are calling a third wave of AI, moving from generative AI to agentic AI, I guess we pronounce it like that. It's essentially the fact that AI is increasingly autonomous. So at the moment we've sort of moved, and everyone's amazed by the creation, the generative potential of artificial intelligence, its capacity to create, but through essentially advanced predictions. But now the sort of the interactive AI and the autonomy of AI increasing is the area which brings much potential, but obviously that's the whole area there. People start getting concerned about where does this go if AI models become very, very powerful. The work I mentioned on that my colleagues in the other part of the Education and Training Directorate are doing involve various sort of assessments of what generative AI could do. This is just an example from of generative AI taking the tests that are used for the PISA assessment, which is the Program for International for Assessment of Students, and it's 15, so assessing 15-year-olds' capacity in reading, maths, and science. And this is essentially the progression of its chat GPT over time of the different versions, and the most recent is still out of date, I guess now, but is the 4th edition of ChatGPT, which sort of, as you see, kind of outpaced 15-year-olds who are in blue there, and the most recent ChatGPT is in green. So essentially, is outperforming 15-year-olds in all of the dimensions of PISA by some margin. So that's just one example of the capacity of AI. It's a somewhat, one can have discussions about the PISA test, and you can have also discussions about what this really means, but it's just to demonstrate how there's been this absolutely amazing progression. Another point, though, perhaps to say is, okay, there's been an amazing progression. Many of you might have seen this graph. It's one that's been produced by the American business Gartner, but it's a kind of question about technology hype. And their hypothesis is that many of these technologies reach a peak of inflated expectations and then fall and then reach a plateau of adoption. And essentially what they're saying is at the moment, generative AI, which is foundation models, is where that red arrow is sort of has just got over the peak of inflated expectations. We might now see a trough of despondency, or whatever they call it, trough of disillusionment, and then essentially moving into a process of sort of broader adoption, or perhaps more realistic assessment of, does it still work? Yeah. More realistic assessment of how it can be deployed. We can discuss whether that's meaningful, but that's certainly a regularly updated chart that's being used in the sector. One thing about generative AI and the potential of artificial intelligence is a lot of the discussion, and you are experts and you may not recognize this, but a lot of the discussion for people who are not necessarily experts has focused on generative AI in the form of ChatGPT and text generation. But and we were all aware, of course, also of the capacity of AI to generate images, fake images as well, and so there's been some publicity around that, but there's obviously quite a wide range of tools out there now to generate, which are generative, but generate different things, that generate media, that generate video, that also in the design field, that can be used for various processes. So there's a whole range, sort of a multitude of AI-enabled technologies and AI-enabled tools out there, and there's a little bit of a tendency for us to kind of focus in on ChatGPT. It's part of a much bigger spectrum, and that's obviously also something that we're taking into account when we think about how is it changing teaching and learning in higher education. If we think then, turning to higher education, how the developments in AI interact with developments in higher education, you kind of have various feedback loops. You have the fact that the new technology impacts directly on people in higher education. Teachers like yourselves and others, adopt the technologies in their teaching and learning. It's a kind of a direct input. But you also have then, as I mentioned, the fact that this is also changing processes in the labour market. higher education part of its mission, or quite a lot of its mission, depending on your institution, your viewpoint, is to train people for the labour market. So then that kind of inevitably, if you have a kind of a good interaction, as we like to sort of see between the labour market and people designing their programs, and then there's another clear feedback loop there. But then, of course, with the sort of the speed of development of this technology and the fact that AI is inherently now in a kind of feedback loop, it's kind of constantly improving as a result of developments in its own environment, means that you also have that the further developments of AI are another factor. So these feedback loops are kind of quite complex, but it's something we need to sort of think about and keep into mind. It's a technology which is sort of, and that's why the US have sort of called it a general purpose technology, is that it's so pervasive that it's changing both the environment and higher education at the same time. There is, I mean, that's the point essentially that people who kind of come in and say, someone from the Tecnológico de Monterrey who came to see us recently, so of Mexico's most prestigious higher education institution, where they're building their own foundation model at the moment, was saying there are many people in his institution who are kind of quite resistant to the idea of adapting their programs, and that he remembers probably studying in UNAM, in the most prestigious institution in Mexico, sort of when he went to university, that people were telling him still to use slide rules rather than a scientific calculator, so it's sort of 80s kind of time, that there was this resistance to certain technologies. That's an interesting example, but it's sort of kind of not appropriate as an analogy for AI, because AI is affecting far more disciplines. It's much more pervasive than some of these previous technological changes. If we think then, I mean, this is just part of the work that we've already started doing, this kind of mapping based on what people are talking about writing at the moment. Some of the opportunities in AI now come to the risks as well, but essentially we see clearly a lot of focus on the fact, the potential for more personalized learning, for better student guidance and learning support. So the potential that AI tools can be used to facilitate the past sort of students' progress through the educational pathway, in a sense. So there's a kind of the improvement of feedback, the improvement of guidance, whole range of things which can be improved and have an impact there. There's obviously the question of enhanced support and productivity for instructors as well. So, but we don't know yet how well that would work. But in principle, there is a sort of a potential to automate routine tasks and allow greater time, free up greater time to spend on other tasks. It's to be yet to be proven whether that will work. And of course, there's the whole question about whether, and we were already discussing this with some of you, whether or not the fact that AI, generative AI, can replace certain relatively routine activities in terms of, say, writing something, drafting something, synthesizing something, learning some basic facts. If that's automated, then in principle, then the question is, how are you freeing up? Are you freeing up time, which is then dedicated to other learning in the curriculum? And that's a kind of key point. And the classic thing that seems to be an emerging consensus around is what you're trying to do is move to a sort of a phase where students are called on to critically assess the content generated by AI to keep their critical sort of faculties, keep their capacity to assess the output, but they don't need to produce it or get put in all of the labor into producing the output. And that's the whole question of how that actually works. On the risk side, of course, we know many of the risks I've highlighted there are sort of, at the top there's some that you could say are slightly specific to higher education, and others which are broader risks and worries. I'm not sure, yeah. more the risks and worries of about AI in society, which are the classic ones in general around bias, around the transparency of the algorithms, around the concentration of a lot of AI technologies in certain commercial operations, certain countries, the environmental impact of AI really quite massive as we have it at the moment, and the fact that at the moment much generative AI is trained by poorly paid and exploited people across the world. But there is then in higher education a kind of a whole range of questions that we're seeing around the literacy, sort of AI literacy of both students and instructors, questions around really sort of, okay, we're training people for a future labour market, we don't know what that labour market looks like, so actually if we want to align with the future labour market, it's become even more complicated than it used to be. And a really quite key one, I mean there's obviously issues around data security, but the key one perhaps that I think really does warrant a lot of attention is the equity question. At the moment, AI tools, the best AI tools cost money, right? More money. And if you can afford them, then that's good. But if you can't, then it's not so good. So basically that's the emerging issue, that there's a really quite substantial divide, both on the individual student level, where it's tools that you want to buy yourself, but also at the institutional level. I mentioned the Tecnológico de Monterrey. It's the biggest, it's the richest university in Mexico. If it's not the biggest, it's the richest. They can afford to build a foundation model, right? But if you are in some regional sort of polytechnic in Mexico, it's really not, this is not on the agenda. So that is not unique to a country like Mexico. That's the case in this country or in any country in the OECD, really. So I think there's really quite a lot in terms of the equity question that is going to come up for higher education. So we just turn to policy, and this is sort of the last part of what I'll talk about. What we've seen, of course, is policy response to AI has often been at the high level. It's been in terms of high-level regulation, and we've seen in the EU the AI Act. We've had the executive order under Biden, which Mr. Trump plans to repeal. It seems so. It was already a lighter touch than the EU's rather cautious approach. Pro-innovation was under the previous Conservative government in the United Kingdom. The Brazilian Senate is at the moment reducing finalizing the text for the Brazilian approach to AI. So there's kind of this is the big picture, setting out the principles. But then there's the big question: what does this mean on the ground? And I think there's a lot less clarity. I mean, there's not that much clarity at the top end, but there's challenges. And a lot of them, basically, I sort of think, if we think we've got higher education institutions, you've got what I've called it sector initiatives, but that might be something like this group. It might be any forms of sort of federations of universities working together, but essentially practitioner-based, driven by practitioners. And then you've got the kind of government policy, public policy level. And the question there is who is responsible for doing what? And I think a lot does end up falling onto, in terms of the detail, does end up falling onto the individual academics, leaders of higher education institutions and higher education institutions. A lot can be supported by groups like this and other networking, but the question I still have, and which you may have answers to, but which I think many policymakers have, is what is the role in higher education policy, or education policy, but let's say higher education policy for government. And there, I guess, there's a whole question, and I've got another slide on this which I think I put in the wrong place, is essentially looking at what are those areas. And I think you can basically summarize there's a kind of a regulatory environment. Does your regulatory environment permit adequate deployment of AI? Do your quality assurance standards, for example, part of that is the quality assurance regime, is that adapted to AI? And then there's the question of the role of higher education, particularly in publicly funded systems, of essentially, to what extent does government have a responsibility to provide additional targeted funding to permit the development and deployment of AI, particularly in light of that equality question or equity question? Just saying, in terms of some of the things we've been seeing happening and where we're sort of wondering is that useful or not, you have this question of measuring AI maturity in institutions, and we've seen a few examples of that. This is a model produced by the UK authority, sort of the national informatics system in JISC, but you have a similar sort of approaches being developed in the US and elsewhere, I'm sure. There's the question of sort of, if you look at what the leading institutions in the world and in Europe are doing, you know, to what extent can we learn from there? We see a lot happening in some of the big sort of leading US institutions. You'll tell me a lot more about what's going on in leading European institutions. And here's the slide I was thinking about public policy, essentially the question about sort of facilitating research, convening mutual learning. There is probably a role there. Sort of there's the question about the regulatory environment, and then that question about funding. So the questions I have basically for you, and this is it, is really where you see your institutions, which frankly are among the leading institutions in Europe. So you're kind of talking from the perspective of some of the more privileged. Where do you see your institutions on that sort of AI maturity curve? The biggest challenges you see in terms of safe, secure, trustworthy use of AI in teaching and learning, and where would you like to see government do something? That's what I had to say. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks a lot, Simon, for sharing the thoughts and also the major OECD projects on AI in the higher education sector. We have around 50
control over both the input and the output, but there's another, and there is obviously a question about in an institution, in a university, you know, what are we now, where you clearly need some degree of common standards in terms of what we expect in terms of self-generation of output versus AI-assisted output and so on. I mean, all of those questions that people marking assignments and so on are going to have. But I think that's a bit distinct from some of the, the question of, I think there are ways and means to deal with a lot of that. I'm not sure. I think some of the worries about sort of, AI means that I can no longer assess my students, that's incorrect. You can maybe no longer assess the students in the way that you used to, but maybe the way you used to assess them wasn't very good anyway. So I think that there's a question around, in future, if everyone's going to be working with generative AI and they're going to be producing their texts primarily with that, it's clearly going to be like, but I still need to understand the underlying issues, and I need to also know how to sort of refine a text and check a text and correct if it's a text, but let's say it is. So there's a whole range of skills that's still very, very important, and I think it's a question of adapting to work out how we're going to try and assess that. But I agree that there's definitely a case within institutions that we need standards because everything's changed so fast. You can't leave it all to individuals to just work it out. That doesn't work because everyone's going to reach a different conclusion, and that's unfair for the students. Whether or not government should be involved in much of that, I don't know, actually. I think a lot of that is ultimately academic, falls within the remit of academic freedom, and the government's job is probably just to permit. But there we are.
But can I just one follow-up on this? Government is already involved because there's, for example, a contradiction if you look at the AI Act now, the European AI Act on the one hand, and the Protection of Our Data Act on the other hand, which would mean that if from next year onwards the AI Act asks us to report and record everything we do with AI, which would mean that if we then use people's data, name, age, and so on, there's a clash. So government is already involved in, which is good because it's there to protect us. AI Act as well as the Data Protection Act. So there are some contradictions in a way which we have to solve now, and I think there we need, as I said, to cooperate with different actors from university, what is what we need, but also the government and so on needs to do that as well. So they are already involved, I think, and have to be, of course. So, and then there's freedom of science and so on. So it's complex, and that's the area where people want solutions very fast.
Yeah. The AI Act, of course, the EU AI Act is criticised for being too restrictive, right? So there's a question. We'll see how it goes forward because it's been adopted, and now we have to look at how it can actually be implemented. And I think that's still quite unclear. But yeah, indeed, lots to do in that. All right. I think we've reached roughly the...
Exactly, but we're perfectly in time, and we took over all the questions, reflections, and comments. Thank you, Simon.
And it's now my time to introduce Pinar Egernes from the University of Bergen. So Professor Pinar Egernes, you are the Vice Rector for Education and Digital Knowledge of the University of Bergen. You are specialized in algorithm with informatics and computer science. You led the Department of Informatics at the University of Bergen and had intensive board experience both at Bergen and nationally. You also served in the directing boards of the Research Council of Norway and similar research laboratories, and helped establishing the NORA AI Consortium, chairing it for its first 3 years. So you will talk about the role of higher education for successful digital transformation and firstly, artificial intelligence. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. And let me just start speaking about the picture, because there was a question about the picture, trying to generate a classroom with AI, and you always get the same kind of images. You get these very blue, for some reason, very blue images with lots of digital heads and some fingers pointing and so on. So this is very, very difficult. And I wanted to generate an image where it's not the AI who is the teacher. There's a human teacher, but the students are learning about AI. And the only way I could get this actually to specify that I wanted a blackboard and books in the picture. Then I managed to get this picture. So this is also created with similar tools, with Copilot of... And that's exactly my point, that so actually I could have a shorter title, Digital Transformation and Higher Education, but I needed to have that long title. I will come back to it. So I am the Vice Rector of Education at the University of Bergen, and that's why I wanted to remind you very quickly how the University of Bergen looks like. I'm sure some of you have been there. This is the city of Bergen seen from the sea. It's by the sea, but on this picture, sea is not really visible. And just to show you that we're a comprehensive university with 7 different faculties, including almost all subjects, and scattered in the downtown of the city. So we're very much integrated into the city of Bergen. And here comes the long version of the title. And the reason we need this long version is that when I say simply digital transformation and education, this is not really clear. Because there is on the one side digital transformation in education. So this is the kind of things that actually we will be talking about mostly in this seminar, like digital tools, AI tools for teaching, assessing, learning, how to aid the students, how to do learning analytics and these kind of things. And there are new methods, new pedagogical methods. There is the universal design. And the focus is very much on these kind of things when we discuss AI and education these days. On the other hand, there is another side of this. This is like, what kind of education should we have so that our societies will succeed with the digital transformation? This is quite different. Of course, these things are related, but still, this is another track. And this is more about how to give both our students, our graduates, but also the general society, digital understanding and skills and knowledge so that they can succeed in the transformed society. So it's for everyone, but in particular to our students regardless of subject. And in addition, we have to, of course, also educate experts in these themes. So we can say the same things about AI. We can say like AI in education, AI tools, and then we can say education for AI. How can we educate the future workers, well, even today's workers, but also future workers who will be working with AI? And so on the one hand, maybe we can say what can AI do for education? How can AI aid us in education? And on the other hand, how can we what can we do for AI to succeed, or for our societies to succeed with AI? And and the reason I just say digital transformation and not really specify AI is that I think these things will really go towards each other, and almost all digital tools will very quickly have some AI in it. So I think we might as well just speak about general digital transformation. So these two things have been addressed before, let's say, before ChatGPT and after ChatGPT. This is really quite different. So in Norway, for example, we had a national strategy for digitalization in higher education, and we had an action plan following it with what kind of things to do. And in these documents, there was a very well-balanced focus on these two sides. So what can these digital tools do for education, for assessment, and so on, for learning? And then what kind of things should we do for our education so that we have enough digital knowledge in our graduates, regardless of their professions? But then, I think this balance got disturbed. First, because of the pandemic, because in the pandemic we had to all do our teaching, on screen, online, and we started using some new tools, and we started thinking, how to get the students engaged in front of a screen when they're all at home just one by one. So this turned our attention very much towards tools, digital tools for teaching. And then ChatGPT came, and then of course we were all very worried about cheating and these kind of things. And since then, we have been talking much more on the left side, and maybe we have been forgetting about the right side. And that's why I'm going to focus on that. There will be enough of talks on the other side, so just bear with me that I will try to challenge you a bit to talk about these things on the right side, because they are also very difficult. It's not easy on one side or the other. So I like to say that 2023 was the year when everybody finally heard about AI, and here comes a small joke, even in higher education. and the reason I say this, even in higher education, is that it was really, high time, and there had been so many opportunities already. But it's really strange that we only do things when we are forced to. So until then, maybe some of us knew that there was something called AI. Many of us maybe did not even know it. But there, at least in Norway, but also in Europe, there were enough opportunities for higher education to get on board before this. So in January 2020, before the pandemic, the Norwegian government launched a national strategy for artificial intelligence. And this was actually, it's a very nice document. Still today, I recommend this to my colleagues in Norway. It's also actually, there's an English version as well. And when the Minister of Digitalization of that time, Mr. Nikolai Astrup, when he was presenting this strategy, he said very specifically this. This is a quote: "We can no longer educate," and he listed doctors, nurses, and forest workers, and then he said these are just some examples among all educations, we cannot graduate any of these kind of people who do not know about AI. So it is said this very specifically, and of course those of us who were already on AI, we thought this was very nice, but this didn't really hit, I would say, the general higher education in Norway. And that document was based on a EU, the European Commission document, saying almost the same things, and many of the figures are fetched from this. So also Europe had a lot of focus on this already in 2019. Now I'm going back in time. At the end of 2018, some Norwegian universities got together and joined and made this consortium, Norwegian Artificial Intelligence Research Consortium, which was comprising of 6 universities at that time. Today it's 18 universities, university colleges, and research centers. So this is something we really like in Norway. This has given us a lot of ways to collaborate, also to exchange experiences in the field of artificial intelligence, but mainly about research. Not so much about education, mainly about what kind of artificial intelligence research is going on at our universities and research centers. So following this, at the end of 2021, at our university at UIB, we launched something that we call UIB AI. And it's a platform actually just to communicate better between the faculties, all these 7 different faculties. So it's very much focused on having all those faculties on board. Many universities, at least in Norway, those who are on board on AI, that's like the Faculty of Science, Faculty of Technology, and those kind of faculties. But here we have steering group members from all of our 7 faculties and student member as well. So this has given us ways to get together. And these pictures are also from before ChatGPT. Even then, there was a very big interest in getting together and sharing experiences. This is also from a conference where companies and industry partners were invited, and people were really interested to see what others are doing with AI and so on. And in February 22, this was our first seminar in this series of UIB AI seminars. The first talk was about this, how AI helps solve protein folding and why it matters. And this was based on a really, really huge result that came a couple of years earlier. I hope some of you have heard it, AlphaFold. So this company, DeepMind, made a product called AlphaFold, and this solved a very long-standing chemistry problem. And this has really a huge effects in life sciences. So maybe you remember from your school chemistry that I'm not a chemist, so but these proteins are made of long strings of amino acids, and amino acids, they fold in 3 dimensions and make small lumps, and they become proteins. And in which direction and where they fold, this gives us very much information of what this protein can be used for. And this is really, really hard to find out. So there's something called the Protein Data Bank. And in July of 2021, we knew about 200,000 proteins, how they were folded. And we had 365 predicted folding. So these are not confirmed by experiments, but they give us still a lot of information about how the proteins are folded. Now, in 1 year, from July 21 to July 22, 365,000 became 214 million protein structures. I mean, that is really a huge leap for science. And this is thanks to machine learning and AI. And the Protein Data Bank started in 1971. So how far they came from 71 to 2021, and then how further they came in 1 year, thanks to AI, this is quite amazing. And well, the guys who led this team of researchers, they got some very nice prizes. And we are talking about generative AI, like it's creating images and text, but it's also creating drugs, and it's creating proteins, it's creating lots of important and useful life-saving things. So I think it's important to remember these things as well. So 2023, everybody heard of AI, but not thanks to these huge achievements in science, but thanks to ChatGPT that came at the end of 2022. And then we had to start thinking, oh my God, what do? We have to forbid the students from using this tool. This was like the first instinct in many universities, many countries. So, and even when February 23 came, since we already had established this UIB AI before that, we were very lucky that we could very quickly put up a panel, a seminar, talking about ChatGPT, and it was so popular, so we didn't have room for more people in this nice room that we have. So we had to put it on stream, and then we recorded it, and it is actually the most popular video by the University of Bergen ever. So you can watch it. It's in Norwegian, unfortunately, but it's still watched. And these are people from many different faculties, and also from a professor of our university pedagogy. And this professor is the guy to the left next to me. He has been for 20 years saying we should abolish exams. We should not have exams. This is not a good way of testing our students' ability to do their professions. And now he says, I'm not worried at all, because I've been saying this for 20 years, so we don't need exams. Do your teaching in a different way. And if actually it's a nice way of checking your teaching and assessment, if it can survive ChatGPT, then you're doing it the right way. If you're worried about ChatGPT, then you're doing it the wrong way. I mean, this was really a fun debate. So anyway, this is still past. But that year, I think every week, at least 2 or 3 journalists called me, like, what are you doing about ChatGPT? And even last week I was called. I mean, I thought maybe they had abandoned this, but last week I got a call and saying that, do you still have home exercises? Do you still have these kind of things? And how do you ensure that your students are not cheating? But other nice things happened in 2024. So this year, you know the guys I mentioned from AlphaFold? Those two to the right, they got the Nobel Prize in chemistry for what they did in that work. And I think it must be a record almost for how fast a result came and a Nobel Prize followed, because usually this can take decades, right? And this prize they shared with another, computational person, David Baker, who gave a computational model for designing new proteins. So I would say, like, the Nobel Prize in chemistry actually went to computer science, but at least it went to AI. So this is like how AI can be used. And not only that, but even the Nobel Prize in physics went to AI. So these guys, this is a bit older result, like these neural networks and deep learning and all these things that you have been hearing about. These are the guys who designed that, which is now being used very much in machine learning. So this is actually a Nobel Prize for the science of AI itself. So I think with these things, I hope that 24 could be the year where AI actually receives its acknowledgement as a science and a scientific tool. And we can talking about a little bit more different things than ChatGPT. So I would like to also tell you a little bit about my field of expertise is algorithms. And I've been doing research on algorithms for almost 30 years. And I would say maybe until 15 years ago, nobody knew what an algorithm was. So when I talked about algorithms, this didn't really ring a bell. And it's a bit like AI. If you ask 5 years ago, I think many people, maybe even in this room, you can ask yourselves, try to remind, maybe you didn't know about AI. Maybe you had heard it, but you didn't really know what it was. So we think these things are new, right? Because we learn them now. We just heard of them. and we think they're new, and then we think that everything is going very fast. So I just wanted to show you a little bit perspective in time of how fast or slow these things are going. So algorithms at least are not new. They are, this is a picture of a Persian mathematician, Al-Khwarizmi, who lived for more than 1200 years ago, and he gave the first definition. So an algorithm is simply a very precise recipe for solving a problem. Like when you're multiplying two large numbers by pen and paper, you write them in a specific way and you do some operations, and that's an algorithm. And then many years passed, quite a few, and we come to the British mathematician Alan Turing. In 1937, he somehow gave the theoretical basis for today's computer science, and he said what an algorithm is as a means of computation, like automatical computations. He was also the first one to ask the artificial intelligence question. He didn't really call it artificial intelligence at that time, but he was asking, can we make a computer program so that a person talking to this program is fooled to think that he's talking to a person? And then, so he asked this question in 1950, and just a few years later, in 1956, we moved to the US now. American mathematician John McCarthy and some friends, they sat down for 2 weeks and they wrote like a theory which made the basis of what we call today artificial intelligence. And then we're still in the US. In 1984, Leslie Valiant is perhaps, because I'm a theoretical computer scientist, I'm more interested in the theory of things, and he laid the theoretical framework of what we today call machine learning. And these are all mathematicians. So, and the reason I'm saying that is that this is really, this was for a long time just blue sky theoretical research. Nothing was happening. But it has very deep fundamentals, it's provable. So it's not like, because nowadays we think it's all very random what comes out of AI, which is true in many ways, but there is a very heavy mathematical foundation of it. So if this is all like this, why didn't anything happen like until recently? And I think the answer lies here. It's data. Like the amount of data. In the lunch I was talking with some of you about punch cards. So this is like a huge hall full of punch cards. And the data in this picture is 4 gigabytes, and I don't think you can buy a flash stick with less than 128 gigabytes today. So definitely data became available, cheap to store and easy to collect. So a little bit of the journey that was before us, and some of us have been. You know, the personal computers, of course, changed a lot of things. The ability to connect to internet from home changed a lot of things. Portable computers, though quite heavy in the beginning, so things were changing, and today we're here. I'm sure most of you have at least 2 of these devices with you. And you have a lot of data on these devices, you have a lot of programs, a lot of apps, they are collecting data all the time. And the data is not stored on those things only, but it's also in a cloud. There are lots of clouds. And the clouds, you know, there's the Apple, Google, Microsoft, many other providers have lots of clouds. They have lots of storage centers all over the world. So there's a lot of data around, a lot of data, and this data comes into play for these things that were before theoretical. Now they can become practical because they have enough data to play with, to train on. And these are just from the Norwegian media showing how doctors are using AI on various cancer treatments. Very different cancer. This is colon cancer on the one side, and this is skin cancer. And these are also from before ChatGPT. So even before ChatGPT, newspapers were putting out news about AI, but still this was like quite distant for many people. And in medicine, AI has really given enormous advances throughout, I would say, even 15 years, at least, last 15 years. here's a guy who has lost his connection, he injured his back, so there is no connection from the brain to the legs, but the brain is good, legs are good. So the only thing he needs is something to read his mind, his will to walk, and then to give that kind of instruction to the legs. And this can be done with AI, because machine learning can be trained on people's brain images when they're walking, and then AI can generate the same kind of impulses to the legs. So now this guy, of course, he has to think very carefully so that he actually puts one leg before the other. But this shows that the profession of a doctor is really something quite different today than, let's say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So science and professions are changing, and how should we educate our students? How should we educate our medical students, our nursing students? And it should not be only that, okay, we should do something so that we can keep up with this. Actually, education should be in front of this, right? We should educate people so that when new doctors come to the hospital, they should teach their older colleagues the newest things. But I'm afraid it's not like this now. So this is a big challenge. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this, education for digital transformation. Which skills should we give to our students so that they can help for a successful digital transformation of Europe? And this successful is important because digital transformation will happen anyway, but it has to be in a good way that comes for the benefit of everyone. So I'm in something called the Norwegian government appointed something called the Norwegian Committee on Skill Needs, and for the year 24 and 25, this committee is to consider digital skills and digital knowledge. So what kind of future skill needs do we have for this? And just watching my time. Okay. A little bit following up from Simon's, like there are lots and lots of documents in the EU as well. What's the state? What's going on? How does it look? Well, not so good. So it says here that the digital skill targets set by the EU are met only by 50%. So still we're lacking a lot of work in this way. And if we look at this is also quite a new report, like how are the jobs going to be in the future? Well, there's a lot of interesting things happening. Like the sectors with highest AI, they can do almost 5 times more work. This sounds amazing, right? And many jobs will require AI specialists, and yeah, growth. If you can put AI into your business, you can have much more growth. And then, of course, when we see these things, we might also get a bit worried about people will lose their jobs. Well, that's not our problem. Our problem is the opposite, right? Our problem is that there will be many fewer Europeans working and paying taxes compared to retired Europeans. So in Norway, the picture is a little bit better, but by 2060, there will be half as many taxpayers as today compared to retired Norwegian. So we have to become more efficient. We have every person, when they're doing their profession, they have to produce more, do more. And I think this is the way we can do this, is to change our way of educating so that we give our students this kind of skills. So these are the kind of skills like for everyone, and also for everyone to be able to participate in the democratic processes and so on. And also to understand the possibilities and limitations of various technologies. And then there's the other. Like, one thing is to give some basic understanding to everyone. The other thing is to, for example, about these doctors I was talking about, like changing the study programs so that the future professionals have the correct tools and knowledge to do their profession. And here are, oh, this turned out quite a bit different. I wanted to show you a little bit other examples. So this is from geosciences. Not so important, that picture. The thing is that for 100 years in geophysics, they know how to predict climate. They have climate models, they have weather models. But now there's also machine learning models without any knowledge of physics or geophysics. They're just looking at weather data and predicting. And they're predicting better. So the blue line is the the blue line is the AI model. The red line is the traditional model. So for 1 day weather prediction, 2 days weather prediction, it's not very important, but a few more days, then the AI is already doing much better without any knowledge of geophysics, except in extreme cases. It's not very good in predicting extreme weather. It's not very good in predicting very high or very low temperature or precipitation and these things. It's because it doesn't have that much data on those kind of things. So the more data it has, the better it works. Here is, I think I'll speed up. Here is a, quite old as you can see, 2017 already, how to find new purpose for old drugs. Some American scientists were wondering whether an asthma medicine could also work for Parkinson. And then they asked their Norwegian colleagues, because we have all these health data, very expensive health data on the public health. And then they managed to find, yes, actually, it seems like there is a very high correlation between people who have had this asthma medicine, they never got Parkinson. So this gives a completely new way of also doing medical treatment. So instead of starting from genetic studies, animal testing, and then studies on humans, this is very expensive, fails a lot. Now actually you can first study data, and then you can extract some connections, and then when you have a high probability of something, then you can actually start doing the other things, which gives much more. And also then you can also find other combinations, other diseases, and how it all affects everything. So then I hope I gave you some evidence for why we need to do the point 1 under the second thing. And do we still need to educate ICT experts? Some people think not. The computers, AI will do all the computer programs. Well, maybe not so much, because I wanted to just show you, we are very worried about the consequences of AI, but there are many other things that worry me much more. Like in this summer, maybe some of you were affected, a very minor software update in one computer program stopped air traffic all through the world, for not only for that day, but actually for a whole week. They had the consequences. Not same, but similar thing happened in Norway. This is Norwegian aviation. They had two main computers. There was some connection mistake between those. And then for a whole day, all flights in Norway were stopped. Some national ID portal is very often down in Norway, and this is the only way to access health services, the tax authority, social security services. This is a huge problem. And then there are all these big IT projects which people spend a lot of money, and then they have to just discard it because it just doesn't work. So this, as you see, important things that are all the gray-looking man in these pictures, and you see like IT scandal, and this is also another one of these. And here, the Norwegian police had some system in their system fail in their computer systems. So I would say there are still huge challenges in these things, and we still need to take care of those kind of problems. So I hope I managed to give you a little bit of evidence for why we need to do this. I will just very quickly give you also how to do it. I don't have a recipe of how everyone should do it, but I just show you a very few examples of how we do it at the University of Bergen. So, training experts, I'm sure all of you are doing this at your universities, offering general skills to all. Maybe not all of you are doing all of these. And then digital skills for doctors, lawyers, and so on. So these are just sample study programs. I'm not going to spend time on this. I'm sure you have many of these kind of programs yourselves as well. This is something which we are quite proud of. So this is a package of 9 small courses. They are 2.5 ECTS, and they are offered to all of our students. Every student at University of Bergen, regardless of their study or how far they have come, they can take these courses. They're also offered to all our colleagues, administrative and scientific colleagues. Everyone can take these courses. And we are also slowly offering them as continued education to companies in the first, in the Western Norway, and then we will also go a bit further than that. Now the interesting thing is that this is a collaborative effort. The courses are taught by experts from 5 of our 7 faculties, so they come from all different departments, but they all have the same code. So they come across as very unified. They all have numbers like DG 100, DG 101, DG 102, and so on. And well, you see, there's artificial intelligence and there's natural language processing, very interesting topics. But there's also programming. There's GDPR and privacy, and medical data science, visualization, lots of different things. So I think this is at least a way that we have found useful at our university, and also it really got a lot of attention also nationally. So many universities, but some universities have approached us that they would like their students to take these courses as well. So I think this is something which was easy for us because we had this kind of research at many different faculties. And I think this is a way, at least for us, it was a somehow easy way to go. This is more difficult, like how to change our education of doctors, how to change our education of teachers, how to change our education of historians, so that they are ready for what I think is already today, but at least for tomorrow. So when they're graduating, they do their work in the AI efficient way. And I think this is much more difficult because we have some older colleagues, maybe they're not using these things themselves. But these are also, of course, all our teachers are scientists themselves, and you cannot really do science in many disciplines anymore if you're not employing AI tools. So slowly we're getting there, but I think we need to get faster in this. So we have made some pilot projects. We have given some money from the central university to applications to do this. But I think there should be much more collaboration, both nationally and not the least internationally in Europe, on these kind of things. And yeah, I think this is not so important. And for lifelong learning, I think we will need to put more effort. And personally, I think many of these problems need a better math education from primary school and on all through Europe. I think we're a bit failing in that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this inspiring talk and those examples. I think we have some time for a few questions.
Thank you very much, Pinar, for the interesting overview and then the more concrete examples at the end. One question for, let's say, clarification and let's say a more general question. For the targeted digital skills in various study programs, I just would like to be sure I understand. Because I'm a physicist, and usually in physics curriculum, we do have coding courses for those who are doing simulations like ab initio, molecular dynamics, etc. Here, indeed, we talk about more general courses on for the skills to, for instance, be in capacity to handle all those tools and so on, right?
I will answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, the next one, yeah, this one. Very good question. Because also in our university, like in maths and natural sciences, all the students learn to program. So this is like in the first semester they have a math course and then they have a programming course. But what did not follow was, for example, what physics is doing is that now they're putting this programming in every course in physics. So that, because there was a gap, you learned to program and then you learned more physics, but you didn't really use this programming. So now this is the thing that they're putting more programming and all sorts of new tools into their physics courses. Whereas, let's say in medicine, in the profession of educating doctors, it's a bit different. They are actually putting AI, like how should a doctor use AI throughout the whole curriculum in different places. So it's a bit different focus on all of them. Did you have another?
Yeah. And then it's a more general question on this package of 9 ECTS that now you included in all curricula. Yeah, actually there are many questions, sub-questions, because just to tell you, for instance, currently in France we have a very recent regulation that is now asking all universities to include some sort of equivalent general courses, but on climate education. So I would like to know, do you see a will or wish from your government to take this as a model and transform this into a sort of mandatory requirement for all curricula because of the importance of the topic? That's the first sub-question. Second sub-question, so how did you deal with the acceptance from the different disciplines to accept that? Because we always hear, but I already have not enough time for all the basics of my discipline, and now you're asking me to replace a module on this and that for something that I don't care about.
Very good questions. So what the government is very excited about this. I don't know if they're going to put any, like, whether mandatory or not, but they're actually showing this as a good example in many national meetings, so that's very nice. So how we did this, to be honest, we put in some money. So we gave some money to those departments who wanted to. So it was really voluntary. Who would like to be on board on this? And then everybody volunteered. Many people volunteered. So we gave them a little bit of money for the developing a course. And then every time a course is taught, then they get a little bit money again. But what they get for teaching is decreasing because we also have some incentives from the government whenever we have students taking a course. So then this is getting balanced, so this is costing us less now. But this has been, also this is based on quite long time work. There have been reports on reports and reports really recommending this kind of thing. But something changes when a computer scientist comes to the rectorate. Things go a bit faster maybe, so we felt like it was already, all the components were there. And so with a little bit of effort from my side and very good administrative help from our study division and some money from the rectorate, then we were able to launch this very, very quickly. And we have courses also on climate and so on, which is open to all the students. They are not really profiled like this. They're a bit different because they have different course. They are coming from different faculties. They have different course codes. And maybe they're like, some of them are 5, some of them are 10 points. So they're not as like as a package like this one.
Standardized.
Yeah, it's not standardized in the same way. But there is a question about that as well, whether we should also have that. Definitely it's on top of our agenda.
Thank you, Pina. I like that very much. I've got one question. When you showed the history of, the mathematicians, Ada Lovelace was missing. Why is that? Why did you not mention Ada Lovelace? It was just the male row, so I was surprised. That's one thing. The other is, you said, and I was intrigued by that. I like that a lot. AI as a science. Some claim, and now I will reveal that I'm from the humanities, but a linguist working with lots of data as well, so perhaps somewhere in between. Some say that AIs probably should be called a new form of communication as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I would really have loved to have some women in here. Another Lovelace is she was a brilliant programmer, and there are many other, there's also Charles Babbage who built a kind of computer.
Yeah.
But like I said, I took a small disclaimer. I'm a theoretician myself, and these are the people who laid really like a mathematical provable fundament that works. So what Alan Turing did, and many people had done many important things before him, but he proved that what your laptops are working the way that they are working. So this was really a game changer. So I took some game changers. There are even more, like the guys who got the Nobel Prize. Many people could be mentioned here, but in my head, at least, these are like the game changers.
I was just curious.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And then whether AI is a new way to communicate, yes, I think it is, but I think also computers are a new way of communicating. Before we had to use, we had phones that had to be connected on the wall, and then we had phones that were not connected to the wall, but after we got these like Skype and Teams and these kind of things, we could talk for free with, our family and friends far away with pictures. So definitely computers have changed the way we're communicating. But with AI, there's also you cannot really trust whether you are talking to your mom or it's a fake video. So we have to learn, both ourselves, but also we have to teach our students to be critical in a completely new way. So we cannot really trust pictures anymore, and videos and sound like before. We cannot take it as proof. But I think I'm a bit less worried about this, because I think we can overcome this by changing a little bit the way we think. I hope. I'm optimistic.
One last question.
I have a comment, because I'm a chemist and I'm working since over 20 years with proteins and peptides. And I want first of all to congratulate you for very nice explanation of assembly amino acid into the protein. But I want to draw the attention that we have to be cautious. Why? Because what the AlphaFold is doing mimetics of proteins in a static fold. And what is happening into the body or in plants, the protein has a specific dynamic and has some post-translational modification that might be important for health and diseases. And if I tell the students during my lectures about AlphaFold and we play a little bit, we are not working with AlphaFold, we just play with it. So they might come with the question, why is Professor Petri still doing in the lab, since we know already millions of structures. Yeah, this is the point. We are still far away from mimicking what is happening into vivo systems. Yeah, but anyway, I wanted to make this, yeah.
And I say thank you very much. And as I said, I don't know about the topic, but I think it's a very good point. Also, maybe also AI tools will be also able to predict like what happens in the body afterwards as well. But like I said, the predicted structures have to be confirmed by yeah, sure. So still, I hope it must have been useful in some way since they got the Nobel Prize.
Thank you again, Tina.
Thank you.
It is time for the coffee break, but no, we need 2 minutes before just to explain the format of the coffee break, because it is a very different format. It's a working